Hey, Keon. I wanted to leave you some feedback on Essay 1. My apologies for the delay in getting this feedback and grade to you. I got just a little bit behind grading essays over the weekend. So my apologies and thank you for being patient with me. Um, I think that I think that you're working with some good things in this narrative. Uh, I like that you kind of have this thread of what your future will, well, how do I say this? Like how you're kind of envisioning your future self, specifically this idea that, you start with the idea that, I haven't thought too deeply about children before since you say in here I'm only 19, but if I did, here are the things that I would want to teach my children. So it's kind of an interesting thread to like weave through the narrative, that idea. And I think you handle it well in that it comes up time and again in what feels like the right spots. Um, so I think that part is working well. In addition, I think that you have like all the right elements of a narrative that would work for that task, meaning that, okay, here are some of the mistakes that I feel like I made, and I don't want my kids to make the same mistakes. But at the same time, right, here are my strengths, and I want to be able to share those strengths with my children. And that's something that I can say as a parent, that's something that I feel very deeply. And I don't know, you seem to have some natural paternal instincts because, as you say, you're not a parent yet, but you've kind of tapped into that. And I think that that's probably related to, well, the good modeling and parenting that your mom provided for you, which comes up in the narrative several times, I think. Here's a couple things that I want you to think about. I'm going to start with the higher order concerns first. Um, I want you to think about your paragraph organization. So, several times throughout the narrative, you start with a really good idea, but you walk away from it, meaning that you don't fully develop it the way that the um, that the reader wants or really needs to be able to fully follow your ideas. So since we talked about situating the narrative in place, you capturing St. Louis in a little bit more detail, I think would be something that would be quite useful. And in fact, when I got to this point, I thought, okay, great, this is where his description of place is going to take off. And you have just a little bit, but, painting your childhood home or the neighborhood, right, would be useful here. And I think this would be better as its own paragraph. Um, you you tell the story of your car wreck quite well. Um, this I think is going to cause some confusion for the reader because fatal usually indicates uh, death. And I know that, if this is the case, it's probably a painful memory. So I don't want to, push you in a direction that you're not comfortable talking about. But, this description might cause some confusion for the reader. So you might want to clarify or give a little bit more detail there. Um, I'm reading for those. Yeah. So here's a good place to go ahead and make this a a new paragraph, and I think this idea would be something to expand on. When you stepped on the football field, it gave you a different feeling. So I think that would be a good place to pause and use descriptive detail. Um, I think that this is pretty exciting, this part where we see this growth and this new direction for you. And here's another point where like you bring up this really great moment where you found your love for graphic design, but you totally abandoned that idea. I think it's worthwhile for you to pause and really dig into this. How did this happen? Did you take a class? What kinds of things did you design? Who are your favorite designers? What medium do you like to work with, right? So do you do most of your work on the computer? Do you like typography? Things like that. And then the idea of your mom feels like a completely other different paragraph. So I'm not sure that all these ideas should be smushed together in one, because it's not really giving enough detail for the reader. And then this idea, I like that you want to talk about teaching kids the golden rule, but this narrative, this moment in the narrative kind of threw me off because we go back in time, right? So before we were kind of progressing forward from like your childhood to high school, uh, to, a change in the middle of high school, and then we go back to middle school. So you want to think about putting everything in chronological order, because like I said before, this kind of threw me off that we were suddenly traveling back in time. So let's talk about some minor order concerns, some things to edit for. Um, do your best to avoid contractions in professional writing, because they're just too informal. So you want to say children have not been something that I have thought too critically about since I am only 19. So you want to avoid using contractions because they're just too informal. So just avoid those. Um, sorry, I'm looking for something else I wanted to show you. Oh, I also wanted you to edit for possession. Here it is. There's a couple of places in the draft where you forgot to leave out your apostrophe. So whenever you show possession, so here you're talking about your principal's hand. You're not talking about more than one principal. You're talking about one principal in their hand. You need to do an apostrophe S. If you don't include the apostrophe, the reader reads that as if it's a plural, like there's more than one principal, but you only mean one and you mean their hand. So, if you were to revise this, I'd like you to give it an edit for possessive form and contractions. And I'd also like you to give it an edit for paragraph organization and expanding on those good ideas, like I said, that were really exciting and interesting, but they just kind of fell flat because you just kind of presented a claim and then walked away from it. So, if you revise, those are the things that I'd like you to focus on. All right, Keon, thanks.